A few days at the UN and Carney's agenda is a lot clearer. Are you ready for this? Welcome to Wake Up Canada News. I'm Brad Wilder. This next article comes from Chris George from the Coalition of Manufacturing. From participation in the official addresses, the session debates, side meetings, and media conferences at the United Nations General Assembly this past week, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney revealed more of his policy priorities than he shared publicly with Canadians to date. Carney's comments and actions in New York leave little doubt about the path he intends to lead Canada on in the coming years. Two world orders were brought to foreground at the UN, and the International Assembly began with Secretary General Antonio Guterres stating, "At its best, the United Nations is more than a meeting place. It's a moral compass, a force for peace, a guardian of international law, and a lifeline for people in crisis," end quote. Guterres suggested all countries need to commit wholly to the strengthening of the UN. That is the purpose of the Agenda 2030 Pact for the Future, he said, and the UN-EPI initiative, to renew the foundations of international cooperation and to ensure that we can deliver for the people everywhere, he claimed. The world needs our unique legitimacy, our convening power, our vision to unite nations, bridge divides, and confront the challenges before us, end quote. Now, Carney, he entered this combative political battlefield, and with his actions and public statements, he revealed his ideological biases and intent to steer Canada away from its traditional international affairs policy positions. Carney made it evident he will start a new course for Canadian foreign affairs, as it appears less aligned with the U.S. and more coordinated with the European Union and particularly France and the UK. He also made it obvious that he would commit Canada to the UN's agendas. Carney's time in New York was most revealing. Consider all that transpired through the 72 hours. Carney's first stop on Sunday, presumably after he visited with his wife and daughter, was to meet with Guterres, where he signed the guest book. He said, "What an honor to be here with my friend, boss, and hero always." Guterres appointed Carney as his special envoy to lead the UN's climate action and finance post. Carney had made a public announcement Sunday that Canada will recognize Palestine as a state. He intended to use the UN meetings to broadcast his unconditional support for Palestine with world leaders, a declaration that abandoned Canada's long-standing policy for peace in the Middle East. On Tuesday, he contributed another $47 million in new funding to Gaza and committed Canadian troops to a future stabilization force to keep peace in Gaza. Carney had coordinated these statements on Palestine with the UN and allies UK, France, and Australia, likely with every expectation that it would frustrate the Americans who were signaling the president was pursuing peace talks between Hamas and Israel. In response to the joint statements, the U.S. State Department said in an email that its focus remains on serious diplomacy, not performative gestures. Our priorities are clear: the release of the hostages, the security of Israel, and peace and prosperity for the entire region. That is only possible free from Hamas. We will continue working with our allies and partners towards these goals, end quote. On Monday, Carney spoke at a council on foreign relations, and in a candid moment, he made the statement that Canada had more in common with China than with the U.S. with respect to the country's concerns for the global climate crisis. He was enthusiastic with his praise of communist China, stating, "In my experience with China, they are, among other things, very sincere and engaged on climate. This is a country run by engineers. This is a country that understands a lot of the engineering solutions to issues around emissions," end quote. He went on to say his administration could collaborate with China on climate policy and that Canada would benefit from closer ties with Beijing. One closed-door meeting he held was with Chinese Premier Li Qiang, who would later report that Carney raised the possibility of expanding cooperation in energy, green development, tourism, and other fields. The Carney government has taken up the Trudeau government's favorable trade and foreign policy with Communist China, a position that is offside with the American administration. For instance, the Carney government has already provided $1 billion financial support for a state-owned Chinese shipbuilder to win a contract for BC ferries from Canadian shipbuilders, sacrifice the Westerner Canadian canola industry in trade disputes with China, denied an issue with fentanyl imports from China, and floated the idea that Canada is ready to import China-manufactured EVs to meet the consumer demand in the next few years. Carney spoke at a UN meeting about international financing relating to his old responsibilities heading up the WEF's Financial Alliance for Net Zero Initiatives. He saluted the leadership of the World Bank and IMF and set out a 4-point plan for countries to consider. 1. Catalyzing financial instruments using risk mitigation tools to better allocate risk between public and private sectors, referencing the work of the World Bank. 2. Recycling the balance sheets of international financial institutions so that they can catalyze new lending. 3. Ensure shareholders look at key performance indicators that are directly tied to Sustainable Development Goals of the UN's Agenda 2030, and he stated that work needs to be completed on cross-border market, and 4. Support the G7 initiative scale, which is scaling private and public capital for sustainable development. Measured in billions of dollars, Carney would post a message later on X in the day saying that countries have a transformative opportunity to build a fairer, more resilient global financial system, end quote. His presentation in advancing this global financial plan appeared as if he never left his WEF role. In Canadian government-sponsored legacy media, Carney's few days at the UN was presented as an unqualified success. His stage-managed document signing ceremony and his choreographed public statements with British Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer and French President Emmanuel Macron about support for Palestine gave Carney a gravitas that belied the remarkable foreign policy break he made with Canada's past policy and with our traditional allies of Israel and the U.S. CBC News and the like simply regurgitated Carney's talking points on this, and with all of his various appearances and statements in New York. In those 72 hours at the UN, Carney has finally shared details of the country's foreign policy direction. It's disturbing that this is done without any national discussion and without any parliamentary debate. However, Carney has confirmed he will move the country away from the U.S. and towards a new set of foreign policies aligned with a select group of leaders at the EU, UK, France, and with Communist China. He's steering the country into the orbits of the UN and WEF, reaffirming those Trudeau government commitments on energy transition from fossil fuels and global financing of green initiatives. It has all become clear Carney is embracing Guterres' worldview, and Canadians are along for the ride as he establishes the country's newfound place in the world. Thanks for watching Wake Up Canada News. Please like, share, and follow us on any of your favorite socials, including Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, X, BitChute, and our website at wakeupcanadanews.com. Till next time, remember you're the voice, and it's time to make it count. I'm Brad Wilder, and I'll see you soon.